Welcome in, folks at home, to Dynasty by Design. We are powered by Viridian Global, the best looking apparel in the fantasy industry. Go sign up for their site, viridianglobal.com, buy something off of the Viridian Wear collection, and use code Maddie to save 15% on your first purchase. Every 5 times that code is used, Jerry, I get a shirt to give away on this pod.
Look at this guy moving up in the world, a man for the people.
Yes. I want to give away a lot of shirts, so please help me out. Now, I just want to preface by saying this is season 1, and I have an excellent supporting cast of guests coming up, and I'm very excited for this. This is a project that I put together this February, and just like 2 weeks ago, and it's already launched. So I'm very excited to put this together. This season, it is my mission to make adept Dynasty information more accessible to those starting on Dynasty. Since this is the first episode of the Dynasty Design podcast, I thought it'd be perfect to bring in the guy who brought me into Dynasty himself. So without further ado, let me introduce Mr. Jerry Sinclair. How are you doing tonight, and where can we find you at?
I am good. I'm on Twitter usually. I do talk football. Sometimes I talk a little bit of history on there at Jerry Sin DWZ. Listen, I'm excited to be on here. Listen, I might have gotten you into Dynasty, but that's only because you didn't know what it was. So that's it. Once you got your foot in the door, you pushed me out of the way, jumped into the pool, butt ass naked, and you've been in it ever since. So listen,
I was bothering you at work, every day.
We have had a few tussles over certain players. I am going to ignore the Rashad Penny takes I may or may not have had in the past, because that doesn't look good on my end. I'll just say
that. And I will ignore the Darrell Henderson takes.
That's
so it's
fair.
all good.
We're even.
We're even there. So we're both wrong with Cam Akers. I'll say that. Yeah. Now before we start, I want to preface by saying that we are asking the 5 W's of Dynasty Fantasy Football: who, what, where, when, and why. So without further ado, Jerry, I'm asking you these 5 W's. What is Dynasty Fantasy Football?
So it is like fantasy football on steroids. And if you've gotten to this point, and if you have looked into, you're trying to figure out what Dynasty is, that means you are probably ready for it, because it means you have probably kicked the living hell out of everyone in your redraft league's ass. You are looking for more. There's something, you're in the off season. I don't know if this is May or August or 2024 or 2032. Whenever you're listening to this and you're trying to figure out if you want to start a Dynasty league, just know that if you've already reached this point, you're ready for it. It's, you draft a team and you hold on to everybody for the most part. You can still trade, you can still drop people, pick people up. Usually rosters are going to be a lot bigger though, so your free agent pool it's lacking for the most part. There's a lot of, like we say on the Dynasty War Zone, crumb bums and shoe clerks out there. You're sort of picking up the scraps. If you ever play in a league with Maddie, he is flipping the bottom of his roster, I don't know, 7-8 times a day, maybe more. Good to see you, Tyler, on here. So it's the most immersive, fun form of this game. It's pure. And it's just so exciting because it's all year. It's 12 months of the year. There's, we just had the Super Bowl, if you're listening to this live. And it's the offseason. If you are a redraft normal fantasy football player, you are doing absolutely nothing in regards to fantasy football for the next several months. Now, you might get a little bit of excited and you might, check some rankings or something in a couple of months, but it's nothing. If you got the itch, if you don't want it to go, if you're a little overweight and you're still competitive, you want to embarrass your friends like I do, but you can't get on a basketball court and beat them because you'll be too winded. Maybe you'll have to throw up and they'll make fun of you. Avoid that totally. Avoid the athletic activity. Come and join us in the Dynasty community where we can, we've got free agency coming up. We've had big trades. Matthew Stafford just got flipped. We're both Lions fans. It breaks our hearts a little bit, but makes us a little excited. We're going to have the draft. We don't have the combine this year, but for the most part, if you're listening to this, you'll have the combine, which is just a wonderful time when you're a Dynasty player. You're essentially just, you're building a team and you're keeping it. So, if you get an egregious injury, you lose Dak Prescott, who's just been absolutely he tore it up in 2020 for the little bit that he played. Your entire roster isn't done, because you'll still have the future. It's not this season's done and everybody's hurt and you can do whatever you want. Maybe you can rebuild, or you can sell off your young assets so that you can win. It's versatile. Matt, you tell me what you think about it. There's you do the startup, you get your team every single year, you're drafting rookies, and that's fun because sometimes you hit and it makes you feel like the smartest man in the world. There's the man that's sitting across from me on the other side of the glass, Matty here. He talked about Antonio Gibson all off season, and I didn't want to hear any of it. And you know what I didn't get? I didn't get Antonio Gibson, and he didn't help me. He helped Matt's teams. It breaks my heart a little bit, but that's fun. That's what makes this game fun. And there's trading. Now, if you're here, you like trading. The active players in your fantasy team are always trading. And Dynasty, there's trading all the time. I can trade rookie picks. I can trade players. I can trade future picks. I can do whatever I want. It's fun. Matt, what got you into it? What made your pants tighten up a little bit once you started to get into this thing?
I like to think of things from a number standpoint. I'm studying accounting. I want to be an accountant. So I like to think of things as a stock market. So every player has a value, and these players that we draft continue to have an up or down value based on their production and their age. So you have to take into account age, you have to take into account production, you have to take into account their situation, and that creates a value for the player. So that's the dynasty aspect of it. You're keeping this player long term. You have to know what is their situation, what's going to happen to them. You have to be sure they're going to be on a team. You can't be getting these Marquise, whatever his name from Clemson, Martavis Bryant. You can't get him on your team because you're going to get stung. You can't get Josh Gordon because you're going to get stung. You have to be sure your players are going to be playing. And Dynasty Fantasy Football, it's a team sport. It's a team of 12 guys who need to build a team together by trading and moving parts together. It's not a 1 versus 1 matchup. It's a group activity. It's like a family activity together where you just trade amongst each other and you make good moves together.
And that's the thing is everybody has been in these leagues. They're very stable for the most part. And everybody remembers the bad trades you've made. Everybody remembers the bad picks you've made. Everybody remembers the time that you embarrassed the other guy with a good trade. And it is like a family. And that's why it's so fun. And that's what Dynasty is. Dynasty is just, if you are, whether you're good at fantasy football or you're just you're just obsessed with fantasy football, or you want more, it's more. It is 12 months every single year, 365 days, offering trades, free agents. You're building your team however you see fit, but it's a different ball game because player values are shifting at every time, every little bit of bad news that happens. Kareem Hunt on the top of the world. He's the king of the Kansas City running backs.
I remember this.
He kicks a girl in a casino and he's worth a wet sock. And now he's starting to, boost himself back up a little bit. So it's just adjusting in those little moments. Because in redraft, you didn't get any of that. It was, okay, he is a Kansas City Chief and now he's cut and now he's worth absolutely nothing on my team. And then the next year he was on the Cleveland Browns and okay, it's cool. You could have manipulated all of those situations in the offseason. If you had a dynasty league, you could have acquired him for cheaper, assuming that he would come back because he was one of the elite talents in the league, which he still is. Or, you didn't trust him. You didn't think he was going to come back. So you got rid of him and sold him for whatever. It's, before we hit record, you said that player values are it's like a stock market. You have to adjust accordingly. And I think that's perfect. I think that's exactly what it is. And you can do that with 30 guys on a roster at any time. It's just, it's fantasy football on steroids. If anybody likes playing fantasy football, I give them play one season of Dynasty. And if you don't add another season, if you don't add another team, going into the next year, I would be utterly flabbergasted because it is so fun.
It is. I've added ever since I started playing in 2018. And when I started, we did a home league and I was back-to-back champs in that league.
Christian
Just saying,
McCaffrey.
yeah. But the thing is, I prepared for that draft. So when you go into your fantasy drafts, make sure you prepare. Like I went on Fantasy Pros. Jerry, I swear to God, I ran over 200 mock drafts on that machine to see where the player values would be, what players I could get. And then I went in the draft and I was just like, everything just went out the window. Everything I had learned from that mock draft, it just went out the window. I was just drafting. So, it's good to prepare. It's good to make sure you know these names. So Fantasy Pros is a great asset. But let's go on to the next thing, and that's who should you be in leagues with?
So it's a little tough because the first league that most people want to play in is always like a home league because you've played in your home fantasy leagues and you've won your championship and you've rubbed it in your friends' noses and you've become obsessed because of that victory, or you haven't obtained victory and you're getting that urge to do something else, so you talk them into a dynasty league. You need to be sure that it's a close group of people, because what you don't want to do is have them play 1 year and it go bad, because that'll happen. You could lose Dak Prescott and Saquon Barkley in the same year, and maybe you had Cortland Sutton or something, and now you're standing there and you're pissing into the wind and it's landing on your shoes and you're upset because you've got nothing to look forward to this year. It happens. What you don't want is that person to bail. So you need to make sure that you have people that are committed. A good commissioner helps. Good communication is the key. If there is one thing that has come up in every single topic, every time I've ever talked about why a league fails, it's because they don't communicate. You have to have a good close group. Like I'm in a league that is just a bunch of random guys. I found them on a Facebook group. They were looking. I personally wanted to challenge myself. I went looking for the worst orphan team I could find, and I wanted to turn them around. And I found this team. And Matt, when I tell you, it was a big old pile of garbage. I mean, it was the biggest, ugliest thing you have ever seen.
Oh, I
Just
believe it.
just random guys, but they have a good chat. To this day, it's one of the leagues that I care about the absolute most. I've never met any of them. I've never talked to any of them in real life. I've never done anything with any of them, but they're good guys and they communicate. And that's why it's a really fun league. And that's why I enjoy it a ton. You need people that are, I won't say necessarily like-minded, because not, me and you are different breeds, man. If you've ever been in a league with either of us, we send lots of trades. We will counter trades. We're
Oh,
very
I send a
active.
trade. I send a trade a day. It's my New
Easily,
Year's
easily.
resolution.
He just sends a trade to me every day. That ignores all the other leagues that he's in. But not everybody's like that, and that's fine. You don't have to be. You can do a ton of things as long as you are active with the league. I think that's okay. If somebody, if you're chatting even in the Super Bowl or something in the league, and you're talking about the game or whatever it is, as long as you can be a tight group of men or women and you can have fun doing it, that's what you need. You need people that are going to be willing to put in time, and not, when it goes bad, to just bail, because it's gonna, nobody is going to win every year. And even if you have a team that's going to win, a lot of the times, I mean, this is Dynasty, those players get older and then they fall off, and you need to be able to rebuild and retool that, and you need to accept that that's going to happen. So that's what I would say. Make sure everybody
Mhm.
is committed, to a year-long thing. You don't need to be obsessively invested like we are 365 days of the year. But if you can be that way, a couple days every month in the off season, and then in the season you're ready and ripping and roaring and doing all that, those are the people you need.
Now, I'm not this kind of commissioner, but there are people who will collect league dues 3 years in advance, just to make sure that people are committed to the league and to make sure that it stays healthy. I think that's a little toxic. I think it traps people in it.
I agree.
Um, I think that league dues should be paid yearly. But you know, because everyone's situation changes, so
Yep.
it's easy to find an alternate. Just hit up Twitter. So the next question is, where should you host your fantasy leagues, Jerry?
Okay. So my oldest home league, I didn't know any better. I ran it on ESPN. We just for this offseason, we haven't even played a matchup yet. We just switched it to Sleeper on this offseason. I'm going to talk about what that is, but ESPN and Yahoo are the ones that we're familiar with. Maybe NFL.com. I've never played on NFL, but I know some people do. They are not conducive to dynasty leagues. It is a lot of work for a commissioner to do that kind of stuff. You need to keep track. I had multiple spreadsheets, so I knew the draft order of everybody, how every trade went, because you're keeping track of 10 to 12 different players and every single draft pick they have, all the trades that have happened. And then the leagues reset on ESPN and Yahoo. And it's just blank for 2 weeks right at the NFL draft when you want to do your rookie draft. It's a pain in the ass. Don't do that to yourself. So the most immersive, well editable, that's not a good word. That's a piss poor word, but the most customizable. There we go. Now we're speaking like we're educated. Customizable platform is my fantasy league. You can do everything. You can change every different type of scoring. And listen, I didn't know you could change every type of appearance there ever was. I always got stuck in the standard. Nobody did anything with it.
The beer foam.
Yeah, and it looked like a Netscape website from 1997. So I was never super happy with how MFL went. And then this guy comes in, and we have the Dynasty Warzone Devi League, which is a whole nother ballgame that we'll talk about in the future.
Mm-hmm.
That is the crispiest, prettiest website anyone has ever looked for on any fantasy platform. So, but there's a reason it says Dynasty by Design at the top of my head here, because the man's a good designer. So,
thank you.
Oh yeah, that is the creme de la creme. Now you do have to pay for it, so that is the downside. It's several bucks every year.
It's like $8 a year per person. It's negligible.
I know. I agree. But I'm just saying, it's a little bit. If you don't have somebody like Matt just making it look like a piece of art in the Louvre, it is not exactly intuitive. It takes a little bit of learning to get used to, but once you do, it's easy and it's great. Sleeper is the free one. That is the new kid on the block. It used to be sort of the premier source for fantasy news. And it was
like Roto Info.
Yes. And they morphed it into their own platform where they have leagues. I like it. I like it a lot. A lot of my leagues have gone to it. I tend to prefer it just because it's easier. And if you're new to Dynasty, it's definitely easier to use. But it doesn't have everything that my fantasy league does. What about you? What's your? I know you're an editing guy, so I know you probably like MFL, but I'm sure. I mean, we have a ton of leagues on both together, so I know you can't hate both or either.
Oh yeah. So my first choice would be Sleeper. It's the most. It's the easiest to use. The UI is nice. The draft capability is really nice there. They have a really good draft board. They're always updating it. They're always making changes. They're adding auctions this year. I love auction drafts. That's something that will be touched on probably in season 2 of Dynasty by Design. But MFL is my baby though, because I make custom sheets for them. I made some codes. I made a mini scoreboard for the top of our league so that you can just check the score right from the homepage. So, if you ever need customization for your MFL pages, let me know. Hit me up on Twitter at Matty Big Chest. I'll do it. There's a fee, but I'll do it for you. So, that's where I would recommend MFL and Sleeper. Those are the two ones as well that I would recommend. Flea Flicker is a cheap option as well if you want to go free and customizable. But Flea Flicker is not my first choice at all.
No, I mean, there's others like
Flea Flicker.
No, I don't anymore, and I just got rid of my last Fantrax league, which I had for a Devi league. There are other options. I think it's just those two for me though. I would avoid the redraft sites just because they're not conducive to Dynasty. And maybe in the future, maybe by the time you're listening to this, that's different. But at this point, I think it's just Sleeper and it's just my fantasy league. They're just so conducive to commissioners and to players. You get, all year. It's much better. It's easier. That's all I can say.
And you just talked about all year, so let's talk about this. When does Dynasty take place?
Okay, so I how many times have I said 365 days since we've been sitting here? A lot, but it's true. There's different parts of each season. There's the point scoring season, which is sort of like the normal redraft aspect of Dynasty, and it is to an extent. You're setting a roster, you are hoping people score the most points, and you're winning week to week to week, and you're going through the standings, and then you go through the playoffs, and it's the same. It really is. But then it changes. This offseason for redraft players, like I said earlier, you're done. You're sitting at home. Maybe you're reading a book. Maybe you're watching something on Netflix.
You're twiddling your thumbs.
You're twiddling your damn thumbs. Dynasty players, what are we talking about, Matt? We're talking about Javonte Williams yesterday in the chat.
We're tinkering.
Yes, we're always tinkering. We're sending trades. I accepted a trade earlier. It just, you're working, okay, this is where my team failed. I'm just going to talk from my own personal experience because we're sitting here February 9th, 2021. The Super Bowl's over. Now it's the grind for the 2021-2022 fantasy, championships. I'm sitting here. We're checking out all the rookies that we can because we're looking on our rosters and we're seeing where the holes are. And, you have where your rookie picks because you finish, your draft pick is according to where you finish for the most part. So if you won the championship,
unless you trade them all away,
yes,
like me,
I mean, so it depends on the league too. If you want to do that, if you want to win the championship, you trade away your rookie picks, win that ship, rub it in your friends' faces. They're embarrassed, and you get to make fun of them. You get to taste their tears. It's wonderful. Maybe you had a few injuries, or maybe you picked the wrong rookies, like a certain somebody that's sitting here talking right now. And you have some holes, so you need to accumulate some more first-round picks so that you can grab as much talent as you can. That's what we're doing right now as Dynasty owners.
Corey Davis.
Yes. Hey, at least he finally sort of broke out. So
there you go.
That's what we're doing right now. It's always building. It's always something. You see a hole on your roster, you go, okay, I need a wide receiver. So you start watching Alabama wide receivers. You start watching Clemson wide receivers. You start watching Seth Williams and De'Ami Brown and all these guys, and you're flipping through. There's tons of resources to find out every name you need. Matty Big Chest is one of them. You're looking at the quarterbacks. You're looking at Trevor Lawrence, and you're looking at Mac Jones, and you're looking at all these guys, and you're just trying to build. And you're going to get to the draft. It'll make the draft one of your holidays for the year, because the moment Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes in the first round to Kansas City, what happens? Your entire world explodes because you think he's going to be.
Joshua Dysinger takes him 101.
Yeah,
over Joe Burrow.
You think he's going to be, running back 3 and he's going to get drafted later. No, he lands in Kansas City. You see Jonathan Taylor, who you had as the RB1 or damn near close to it in that draft class. He ends up on the Indianapolis Colts with their offensive line. You see DeAndre Swift of the Detroit Honolulu Blue and Silver Detroit Lions.
My man, Beandre.
And listen. He still overcomes the Lions' ineptitude. Bless his sweet heart. You get excited for those things. You see Justin Jefferson get drafted in the spot that Stephon Diggs just vacated. And you go, okay, maybe he could step into that role. And then the man, you draft him, he falls.
And he soars.
I'll take him. He's just a rookie. I'll just put him on my bench. We'll see how it goes. No. He helps you win your MF championship, baby. That's what Dynasty is about. It is so fun. It happens all the time. And after the draft, now you're flipping, you're doing whatever you have to. Hell, let's say you lose a guy in the preseason. I know we didn't have a preseason this year, but it happens. Or maybe you have Darius Geis and
Cortland
he
Sutton.
decides to be and Cortland Sutton. Anything can happen. And you're just moving them. You're tinkering. You're trying to, maybe you're accumulating. Maybe you're taking guys that have a little bit of hype and they showed a little bit of something, and you're going to combine them with some other stuff, and you're going to try and get something big. Or you're going to combine them with a future rookie pick, and you're going to try and get somebody big. You're going to try and get the next Stephon Diggs, the next guy that takes that step. Oh, it's always, man. That's when it is. That is why it is so fun, because it never dies.
It's 365 because, I just traded Dak Prescott for in a Devy league. This is a different league than a Dynasty league for Jamar Chase, Chase Claypool, and Bryce Young from Alabama. I'm taking risks there because it's 365 days a year, and I want to see what I can get. I'm stacked at wide receiver. It's a fun league. Let's do fun trades because I like it.
And the thing about Dynasty is you get to hear every name because you sort of have to. Like, you can't just be clueless. Like, I say this on
You
the
have
Warzone
to know
all the time.
every player.
Yes, I'm not a scout. I don't know how to scout things. I don't. But what I do know is everybody. I know who they are. I know where they went. I know what they look like when I watch them. And I can see if somebody is good or somebody is not good. And I choose which guys I want to accumulate for my teams. And it just makes it more fun. Like I said, like the draft becomes a holiday for Dynasty players because every single person, everybody's got to talk about it because everybody's got all their opinions and all the situations. And then the hypotheticals start coming. And it's just the fluctuations of value based on that. It just makes this game so fun. And it's just something that redraft does not have. There is no fluctuation in values over the course of a season. It does not exist unless somebody gets injured, and that's it. There is nothing else.
Or suspended for kicking a woman.
Sometimes that'll happen. Hopefully not.
To Jerry's favorite players too. It's always Jerry's favorites.
That's because I'm an idiot, and I just like the worst guys in the world, apparently.
So we were gonna wrap it up with why should you play Dynasty Fantasy Football? It's obvious. Dynasty Fantasy Football is a drug. It's addicting. We love it. We do it every day. It takes place every day in my life. This is something that it's formed. It's a hobby. It's something that you do, and you have fun with it because in the end, everything you do is just for fun, right? So why would you play Dynasty Fantasy Football?
God, I mean, for that reason, and it's addicting. God, it's so addicting. Like it just every time somebody ever asks, "Oh, I'm curious about joining a Dynasty league," the same thing I say every single time, like a broken record, is welcome down the rabbit hole because it is something that once it starts to brew, it just builds and builds and builds. And you just start liking it more and you start diving deeper and you just start getting more obsessed. And then you start adding leagues and then you have so many leagues and it's unbelievable. And you have every
and
single
then you make a podcast.
And then you make a podcast every time. It's just, it makes you want to talk football like we're doing right now. It just makes you want to do that all the time. But that's, it's fun. It's so fun. I can't reiterate that enough for the people. And listen, like I said earlier, if you've already gotten to the point where you're here, maybe you listen to the Fantasy Footballers or you listen to the 06010 on ESPN or you listen to my friend Kyle Richardson on the Fantasy Headliners on YouTube because you wanted to get better at your redraft league. And every once in a while, they'd throw these little blips about Dynasty and you realize that you were a nerd. You realize that you were listening to fantasy football podcasts regularly to try and win your leagues. And so you wanted to do a little bit more. Just do it. Just do it. I promise you it's fun. I mean, like Matt said, like I got him into it. It didn't take much. It really didn't because he liked fantasy football and he was, we had our work league and you made the championship and you could tell you wanted it. You wanted it and you lost Andy Dalton pooped his pants that championship. I'll never forget it. That was the one year that Andy Dalton was a monster. And it gives you something. You build towards something. And then it was.
He broke his thumb.
Yeah. Then it's just the nuke goes off and we love it so much. Like I have my pinned tweet on Twitter at JerrySentDWZ. It's my first team, my home league. I have done the story from year one and I've been adding, I don't know how many tweets it is, like 30 or 40. I haven't added anything this offseason, but once the rookie draft goes, I'll start adding it again. It just sort of breaks down everything, all my misses, all my hits, the fun things, when I like to make fun of my friends, when other friends have dominant teams and it makes me hate them. It's just every bit of emotion that you can come up with Dynasty, it comes out and it just makes it, and the most important thing, you meet a ton of cool people. Like there are so many people from all over the world that I have never, ever in my life spoken with any real Australians prior to Dynasty football. And I feel like half of the people that give me notifications on my phone are from Australia now. It's something that connects people. It's a brotherhood / sisterhood.
You're making
It's a community.
You're making a great point, because I wanted to touch on this. You need to find a group. You need to find a group that plays Dynasty, because this is something that's important, because you get to talk and you get to just talk theory. It's like, like back in the 1800s when they were in the Enlightenment and they just went to these parlors and they talked. This is what we do in our Dynasty group chats. Join one. Join the patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone group chat. It's a great place to be. That's where Jerry and I are. You can find us there. But, that is a wrap for episode 1 of Dynasty by Design. Remember to leave a like. You can rate however you feel. I want to know your honest opinion about the podcast.
I want a 5. Give Matt a 5, or I will come back and I will give you a piece of my own mind. No,
well, if you leave a 5 stars and you have an issue, just let me know what it is, because I want to fix it. So please let me know. And whatever you can do to help the show, it goes a long way. So next week, we have a special guest in Memphis to talk about 1 QB versus Superflex leagues. And before we go, Jerry, tell the people again where they can find you.
You can find me on Dynasty Warzone. I'm on Twitter too, JerrySinDWZ. Matty boy, this is fun, man. This is good. This is what it starts off as. That's why we're here. We're talking about Dynasty Fantasy Football because more people should play it. Because a lot of people love fantasy, and if they just gave Dynasty a try, I can assure you that you would play more. So I love this idea. I love this sort of setup, because when I was originally dominating my redraft leagues and went to go look for Dynasty, I was looking at articles and trying to read every article, and some of them are behind paywalls. Other ones, I didn't really know anything about it. And, it can be intimidating. And that's why I think you're doing a good thing here, because it's going to walk some people into something that I think they're really going to love.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, man. And I really appreciate you coming on. It means a lot to me, being the first guest, obviously being the guy who brought me to Dynasty. Let's go. We worked together. We talked fantasy football together for about 4 years. So, it's just right to have you on to talk fantasy football for the first episode. So thank you for coming on. And folks at home, have a great day.